ain't got no shit. Shorty say I'm so weird. Homies know I'm for real. Name a rapper that I won't kill. Just another cocky ass rapper. Look, when you see me, don't compare me to these rap dudes. I'm more than catchy ad-libs and some tattoos. I'm treating every single beat like fast food. I'ma raise the bar, hate to be the bearer of bad news. I'm on my square like a mason. Somebody call Tigger, man, let's bring back the basement. The real when I'm ill-siders, get back to basics. I don't even wanna rap no more. Give me a placement, make it plain for simpletons. Hip-hop is my Wimbledon. Shout out to Serena Queen, I see her keep on killing them. Even so potent, cause it's 3 times 3. Got the blood of a king, word to Shahrazad Ali. And I'm like Ricky Bobby on. I'm the shit, watch me body on. Yo, old school, lottie dotty on. That boy fly, man, somebody put a pilot on him. I ain't got no shit. I don't know. Shorty say I'm so weird. Yes, for sure. Homies know I'm for real. For real. Ain't my rapper that I won't kill. Yo, I'm just another cocky ass rapper. Pretty soon I'm finna blow it and it won't matter. I'ma put it in all of the chit chatter. Hottest in the city, just take a look at the data and you act rappers pissing me off like weak bladders, man. And that's just what we do. They say I crossed over like a Hebrew, but it's more like I verse son. Me versus y'all, that's I verse son. They don't get it, I promise they don't get it. I saw rappers all the time, but I know it taking me. It's just the story of my life. They tell me I'm too deep. It's like I'm always in a dream and getting enough sleep. K-Dot bust the floodgates open. I hopped on the train first thing, smoking to the money. You're now witnessing the West Coast Renaissance. In the summer, it's like everybody getting pop. No shit. I don't know. Shorty say I'm so weird. That's for sure. Homies know I'm for real. For real. Ain't my rapper that I won't kill. Yo, listen to me. No shit. I don't know. Shorty say I'm so weird. That's for sure. Homies know I'm for real. For real. Ain't my rapper that I won't kill. Yo, I'm just another cocky ass rapper. Man, you boys too hard for your own good. Willing to give your life up for your hood. Consequences of this California mind state. I got a flow that'll quickly lower the crime rate. Listen, get your paper, leave that silly shit alone. I'm finna school them well I can. I know I won't be here that long. This is the beginning, I'll be raising on your thoughts. Maybe looking stupid like, hold up, man, know you lost us. Maybe that's why I'm a big homie to my peers, and I only been here 28 years. To the fallen, I salute, but we done shedding tears, trying to get rid of all of this fear, man, embrace your heritage, out Kabuna. That black and Filipino shit that I be on. I'ma fall back, take a second, see if you can add that up in my just another cocky ass rapper. I ain't got no shit. I don't know. Shorty say I'm so weird. That's for sure.
What the hell wrong with this?
Homies know I'm for real. For real. Ain't my rapper that I won't kill. Yo, I'm just another cocky ass rapper.
Let's see.
All the people.
So let's do this. Sure. screen with y'all real quick. No, that's not it. I'm tripping. No, my friend. Hold up. All right.
Okay, Attorney Steve Vonner, we're back. In this video, we are talking about
Handle this real quick while y'all still ain't here yet. All right. I think I have. Bear with me. All right, y'all. This is the deal. Fair use copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips. The balance in favor of fair use. All right, so there, my fair use disclaimer. All right. Now, I'm going to start let's see. I'm going to start with a video. Who's that? Who's that? Who's me? What's up, son? Why you always up so early?
Why it's important to really think about this. They asked me to give a presentation on whether or not I thought the Common Core standards were developmentally appropriate. Talk is going to be sort of at the other end of the spectrum, looking at the entering grades and trying to see if the standards look okay for them. Why? Why would we even care if they're developmentally appropriate? Well, you can answer that with one word, and that word is stress. Kids that are subjected to standards that aren't appropriate will be more stressed. And this is actually shown to be true in research. So this is just one of the research studies that has been done, but they just looked at kindergartners in a classroom, compared them in a developmentally appropriate classroom and one that wasn't. And the kids in the one that wasn't were in there biting their nails and twirling their hair and doing some of these other things, tremors and tics and looking nervous. And I like this one about having physical aches and pains, because as a psychologist, I can tell you that's the first sign of anxiety when your kids are little. So this is why it's important to really think about this. So to do this, I have to sort of give you a crash course in child development. But basically, in a nutshell, it means that we don't think that kids' brains are the same as adults' brains. They're different. They're still developing, and they keep developing from the time they're born until they're adults and even onwards. So we generally do a pretty good job of this when our kids are babies and toddlers. You know, if a child hits its mom's mouth while they're holding the infant, we don't arrest that infant for assault, right? We all know, didn't mean to do that. So we do a good job. But once they start talking and start reasoning, we sort of stop doing that. And we generally think, well, if you're nice to them and you don't shame them, then you're being developmentally appropriate. But that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is really understanding how their mind is developing and then matching how you are presenting information to them based on that. So I was going to do a little example about a typical exchange between a kindergartner teacher and a kindergartner. You might see, you know, little Jimmy goes over and scribbles on Susie's paper, and she runs off and she cries, and the teacher pulls him aside and very nicely says, you know, what do you think Susie was feeling when you did that? Or what would you think if she came over and did that to you? And it would look, you know, like she's being nice and fashion. Give you another little brief class in child development. So Piaget, most people have sort of heard of him if you took psychology. I'm going to skip his periods that aren't school age and go right to the pre-operational phase, which is 2 to 7 years of age. So this includes kindergartners, first graders, 5, 6, 7 years of age. He divided development into periods. This one's called pre-operational. It's kind of just what it sounds like, that they are cognitively really focused on how things look. So when you show them 2 cookies plus 3 cookies equal 5 cookies, and you have this demonstration here, they're going to kind of look at the 2 and the 3 and think that looks different than the 5 that are all together. And they're going to really struggle to understand that. But if you wait just a little bit longer, you're going to be in this concrete operational period where that is like fabulous for them. Practicing math facts is right up their alley. They love to do concrete operations. What distinguishes this from the next one called formal operational period is that they can't yet think abstractly. They are beginning it towards the end of the concrete period, but they're really not able to think abstractly until the formal operational period, which is 11 to 12. This is why when you try to bring algebra down and down and down and down, you sort of hit a wall around 5th, 6th grade. That you can introduce pre-algebra concepts around 6th grade and they sort of get it. They get it even easier at 7th grade, even easier in 8th grade. And that's because their brain is maturing and then they're now able to think abstractly. So it makes a difference if when we introduce the material. So this is a typical 5 and 6-year-old. They believe other people see the world the same way they do. They cannot understand another person's perspective. So when they see something really cool in a book, they'll say, look in the book. And you have to tell them, like, turn the book so I can see it. You know, they can't understand that your perspective can't see what's right in front of them. They also cannot reflect upon their thinking. If you said to them, well, what do you think of chocolate chip cookies? They would look at you like, huh? But if you ask them, do you like chocolate chip cookies? Yes. Do you want me to bring you one? Yes. So you can't really ask them to think about their thinking. The other part is that they are only semi-logical. So when you might ask a child, is Bugs Bunny real? And he'll say, well, he can talk and bunnies don't talk, so he's probably not real. But if he didn't talk, he'd be real. So you can see that they're using a little bit of logic, but then it turns out not to be all that logical. And they also routinely confuse reality and fantasy. They don't have that down quite yet. So what are the consequences for children who are subjected to developmentally inappropriate standards? Well, if we go back to that case of little Jimmy who scribbled on Susie's paper, you know, what will happen when the child just stares at her in confusion? The teacher's going to think like, oh, you know, what a little psycho, right? He doesn't even empathize. He can't even tell me what this other kid's thinking or how she's feeling. So the teacher might walk away thinking there's something wrong with him. They might even communicate that to the parents that they really need to work on empathy at home because their child is showing signs that they're not empathetic towards other kids. And the kid's obviously going to see the disapproval on the parent's face or on the teacher's face too. So this is what's at stake with standards that are not developed with careful consideration for what's developmentally appropriate. First of all, it's, you know, from the child psychologist's perspective, you're going to stress out the kid. I'm going to be real busy because I specialize in anxiety, because I'm going to have a lot of really anxious kids.
She's talking about Common Core curriculum.
The classroom as a whole, because the curriculum is going to include lessons and strategies that aren't appropriate, and the teacher's going to have to go over and over and over them to nail those down. And it's really going to leave less time for grade appropriate materials and really no time for repeating those or repetition. So I'm going to talk about math facts later and when to introduce those, and I'll defer to Professor Milgram, but I'll give a stab at it. But the other things are just what I talked about. The teachers are going to see typically developing children as delayed. Parents may be informed that their children are behind, and kids are going to get measured against inappropriate standards and might be held back or tracked into remedial classes that they don't really need. So this is I'm assuming all of you have probably seen the standards, but this is actually one of the parts of the math standards. These are called mathematical practices, and these are the same from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. So after your crash course in child development, I want you to read those and pick out the ones that aren't exactly developmentally appropriate for kindergartners. And your eye's going to go right to number 2, right? So you're going to see that this says that, you know, students of mathematics in kindergarten should reason abstractly. And we actually know that's basically impossible for them. So in general, I see this with Common Core, and other people, as they discuss math and English standards later, can sort this out for me. But what I kind of saw was that they saw this college and career readiness goal, and then they backed those standards down all the way to kindergarten. So instead of thinking about what's developmentally appropriate for a kindergartner, they're thinking, this is where we want that kindergartner to wind up. Let's track this all back down to kindergarten and have them work on those skills in a kindergarten way. There's some major flaws with that. We can train students to answer questions. You can train a second grader to answer abstract questions, but you have not really changed the internal process of understanding abstraction. You have trained them to answer questions. But you see this all throughout the standards. They'll talk about fewer, deeper, not a mile wide and an inch deep. They're always deeper standards, fewer and deeper. And really, when I look at them, often they're requiring these children, 8, 7, 9, who are right in the midst of this concrete operational period. Remember, they like concrete operations, no abstractions. And they're requiring them to explain, justify, and apply principles that are abstract in nature. And this is repeated throughout the math standards. It's no longer good enough to know that 7 minus 3 equals 4. You have to explain and justify how you came up with that answer. And probably, if they're going to make you do it the other way around, which you often see them do, you've got to say something about the inverse property of mathematics. And these are really abstract principles for a young child to be learning. So if you told your kid, I'm going to give you this watch, and when this watch says 5 o'clock, and you taught him how that works, when it's 5 o'clock, come inside because it's time for dinner, done playing. And that child went outside and he came in when that said 5 o'clock, you would think, I have taught him about the passage of time. He knows how to keep track of things, and he knows when to get inside. But if that watch stops working at 4:50, he's going to happily play for hours and hours and hours because you've not really helped him to internalize the concept of the passage of time. Adults will eventually say, hey, it's been a while. We better check on that. Kids are not going to think that. He's going to be looking at his watch if you've got him well trained. Sorry, here's my next one. Here are a few of the really specific standards that I wanted to pick on. There's lots of them. This one is English and language arts. So I'm not sure. I'm not a curriculum expert. I wasn't on the committee. Maybe we'll hear about that later. But this one seemed a little odd to me. Distinguish shades of meaning among related words that describe states of mind or degrees of certainty.
3rd grade.
I don't know why that's important in 3rd grade.
3rd grade. Wow.
But it certainly is asking kids to think abstractly. They've got to think about their state of mind, other people's states of mind, and then apply it to these words. And I don't think they're looking for concrete explanations. They really want to know about the nuance. This one comes under that standard of nuances, the understanding that words have nuances and what the nuances are between words. I tried this on my 8-year-old. She's pretty smart, but she just kept repeating back. I said, what's the difference between knew and believe? She said, well, when you know it, you know it. But if you just believe it, you just believe it. You're right. I knew what she was saying, but she didn't have the words to say it. So I'm not sure if that would be counted right on these assessments that come out, though.
3rd grade.
She's going to have to be trained to say something different, even though her understanding is probably not going to be affected one way or the other. So I like this explanation that, if you're a kindergarten teacher and you are trying to make your math very abstract, and you hear one of your little kids using Cinderella in the word problem, that Cinderella had 2 apples, and she gave a friend an apple. How many apples does she have left? Woo, that's not abstract, right? Like this, you should know the difference between fantasy and reality if you understand abstraction. So she's going to have to engage in a long discussion with this girl about how Cinderella is not real. And she may even convince her, right? She could say, Cinderella talks to mice, and they understand her. and she understands them. No people can do that, right? And the girl would be, oh yeah, you're right. You know, Cinderella must not be real. She can talk to mice. But did she really internalize? Did you turn that switch on for her? Did you make her understand the difference between fantasy and reality? Well, no, you didn't. You just trained her to say Cinderella isn't real. And she might be walking away thinking, you know, like, oh, those darn mice, why are they in the movie? Because if they weren't in the movie, then Cinderella would be real. And then you ask her, well, is the Little Mermaid real? And she'll say, well, yeah, there's no mice in that movie. You know, like, it's cool. She's good. Like, Little Mermaid isn't real. Now, if you had just waited until she was 7, she'd be like, oh, yeah, she's not real. You wouldn't have had to teach it to her. She would just really understand it because her brain could understand that by now. So here's one that I hope gets covered somewhere, because I'm right in the middle of trying to teach my daughter math facts. That is a hard task. It takes a lot of repetition. You got to do it again and again and again and again. So I was a little curious about why it started in kindergarten. One of the standards is that they will fluently add and subtract within 5. That's not that hard, right? It's only going up to 5. But we do know that they'll have to be drilled on this, right? Again and again. And we do know that they are, they're in the pre-operational stage, which means that they haven't yet fully understood operations and how to change things. And if you had waited until they were about 7, they would learn those math facts a lot easier. And this is probably why in other curriculums, you usually see memorizing and being fluent on math facts in the 1st grade, or maybe even in the second half of 1st grade, they're starting that. That's what I'm a little bit more used to. I was a little surprised to see it in the kindergarten standards. But this is, again, kind of what I saw in general with the standards, that they're trying to almost push down heavier, higher level things on the lower grades. And it takes a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of the teacher's time to get them to all know it fluently. Means you can answer that question within 3 seconds, right? Somewhere in there. So you've got to get these little kindergartners. What's 2 + 3? 5. You know, you've got to get them really fast. And that's going to take a lot of repetition. And it's going to take up a lot of time that they should have spent on more basic skills of counting, one-to-one correspondence, moving things around, things that are appropriate for a kindergartner to be working on. Some of them are going to be able to do this. But then the teacher's going to be wondering what's wrong with these other kids that don't know how to do this. And she's going to be worried about her own evaluations. There's lots of really interesting research on fluency of math facts, but we all know it's very important. There's a study, I don't know if they'll cover it later, but they did brain scans. So this is the neuroscience and psychology. I mean, brain scans of kids who were 12th graders doing math facts, and they were doing fMRIs. So this is sophisticated stuff. And they saw the ones that had them memorized and were fluent were using a different part of their brain than the ones who had to do computations. And we've all kind of known that, like, okay, if you don't practice your math facts and know them, then your brain power is being used by doing the computations for the little math facts, and it's not opened up to explore the other higher level thinking things. But what the study showed was that actually it's more important than that, that they actually don't even develop that framework there if they haven't made the math facts fluent and automatic. And those kids scored much higher on the PSATs. So we know that it actually does affect not just those math facts, but higher level thinking. But you've got to balance that with, okay, should we really start it in kindergarten? Are we going to create that phenomenon of math anxiety, which is real? They've also done fMRIs on 7 to 9-year-olds and asked them to do math facts. And they find that the fear center in the brain just gets lit on fire for some of these kids.
The fear center of the brain gets lit on fire.
These are particularly the kids that are under the gun with timed mathematics.
Think about that.
In 1st grade. They get really anxious about that. So you've got to balance the need for it and not stressing them out. So the social emotional goals are really the ones that, I know they're not called that, but when you read them, you know that's what they really are. They're under the speaking or the listening, and some of them are even under the writing. But, you know, kindergartners are at the point in their development where being... Okay, that's my son. Isn't he cute? I have to use kids I know so they won't sue me for using their images. So he asked me to take this picture of him. I was visiting him in his kindergarten classroom. He built that little sculpture with sand. So proud of it, wanted me to take his picture. You can just tell by the look on his face. He's happy as clam. This is what kindergartners are doing at this point. They are being independent. and this is very important because we don't want them to be dependent, right? We want them to organize their stuff on their own, tie their shoes on their own, pull their pants up on their own after they go potty. So that is what they're working on, and they're very proud of that, and that's what they should be working on, is being independent. They're also working on being competent, exhibiting mastery, being creative. Now, here's one of the kindergarten standards. That's a social emotional standard really housed under writing, that they are to, with guidance and support from adults, respond to questions and suggestions from peers and add details to strengthen writing as needed. So, instead of proposing something that would be more aligned with a kindergartner's goal of exploring creative independence, instead they've suggested the social emotional goal of being dependent on other people. So this little kindergartner is the little adult, right? And she's going to hold this board meeting where she's going to present her writing. She's going to elicit feedback from her peers, and then she's going to take that criticism, feedback, back to the writing table and edit her work to include details and strengthen her writing based on the suggestions of other people.
In kindergarten.
I mean, anyone who's had kids is like, what? You know, that's not going to happen. But what are really the emotional effects of this? Well, we don't really know because these are new standards. There was no citation after it that says, oh, see the research here that showed this was a really good idea. So since there's no research yet, I'm going to hypothesize based on my expertise in child development that we are going to see, oh, sorry, I keep forgetting to move it forward, a loss of creativity. Because we're getting started early on conformity, right? That you have to figure out what the other people want you to do and incorporate it in there. And we know that kids' level of creativity goes down for every year that they're in school. But this little exercise is going to speed that up a little bit.
Possibly
they're going to get frustrated because the child is internally motivated to be independent, and you're asking them to be dependent on the other person. You're probably going to start some conflicts out on the playground. You said that my cat should be orange, and I thought it was cool when it was black, and why did you say that? And I had to change my work, and that's not fair. And you're definitely going to see lots of tears. You're going to see my little son's face when somebody says, I think you should stick a flag in it, and sticks it into his sculpture. Crushed, right?
Derek Williams.
Okay, so here are some of the other ones. I'm going to go through these more quickly.
So there, we're going over Common Core right now.
Speaking and listening under kindergarten, they're going to speak audibly and present their thoughts, feelings, and ideas clearly. Again, a little board meeting adult, capable of adult exchanges. The first graders are going to build on others' talk and conversations by responding to the comments of others through multiple exchanges. What did you think of the teacher's presentation on Little Red Riding Hood? I thought it was lovely. What do you think we should do next in book club? I think we should, again, read Little Red Riding Hood. Okay, here's second graders. Second graders are going to follow agreed upon rules for discussions. For example, they're going to do something that signals they're going to gain the floor in respectful ways. Listen to others with care. Speak one at a time about topics and texts under discussion.
In the first grade.
Okay, so they say that teachers wear many hats. Have you guys heard that? They wear many hats. They're mentors, they're mothers, they're fathers, they're therapists, artists, scientists. But now after reading these standards, I'm afraid they're going to have to wear yet another one, and that would be the hat of a magician. They are going to have to somehow get these little kids to sit down and do these things that we can't get adults to do. So how did this happen? You know, how did it happen that a kindergarten goal is to hold a board meeting? And so they were talking about the committees, but when I look at the committee, I didn't see any early childhood educators, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten. I did see one, I think, or two, maybe elementary school teachers. And there were no child development experts on there. It certainly weren't psychologists or
not specifically tied to research.
Maybe a neuropsychologist. And, you know, if in your work, you often hear about this interdisciplinary approach and how that can be helpful. That somebody might say, hey, let's think about the standard on this way. And I'm not saying that I'd be the expert. I would not. I wouldn't want to be on that committee. But I would defer to the people who really know the content area. But they might learn something from somebody in a different discipline about the timing or something like that. So additionally, it's not apparent that the individual standards were tied to any research. I mean, normally when you see something this important, you see these citations after it that have little people's names and dates, and that's because they're based on research. So this is my last slide here. You can go eat. So what do standards look like in other disciplines? So this is just one random standard I pulled out. This is from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. They set forth some standards treating childhood OCD. So each step or phase is guided by research and science, and not just any research. This has to be state of the art, published in an academic journal, peer reviewed. Your peers would love to tear you down, so they are looking for any flaw, making sure that you're at the top standard before they will publish your work. And that helps all of us because we don't have to do all that work. We can just read the article, integrate it into our practice. So surely you'd think that the academic standards for a nation of children would be based on research. We don't want them to be little guinea pigs in experiments, or mice in psychology are the experiments. And we're going to just see how this goes. And, hopefully it'll all work out. We would like to see that it's based on research, and we demand that in other fields. That you can even see, like, okay, so the recommendation is for moderate and severe OCD, medication is indicated in addition to CBT. And you even see this little CS afterwards. I included the key for you. They're going to tell you how strong of a recommendation that is and what type of science that is based on. And they're even going to tell you it doesn't mean that everything has to be that way, but if it's just an opinion or kind of an option, they're going to tell you this is just an opinion or kind of an option. So then you can weigh that evidence. So for the last one, I'm just going to leave you with a slide of pictures. Okay, so this is what a developmentally appropriate kindergarten classroom probably looks like. We're going to hold off on drilling down the math facts probably till first grade. And they're going to spend a lot of time exploring, creating, and spending time independently working on some things. So those are just pictures from my kids' classroom. All right, thank you very much.
All right. So basically, we see that Common Core, okay? This Common Core curriculum was not tested, there was no research done as we know of before they implemented it. It's crazy. So here you can see some of the standards for Common Core. Yeah, distinguish shades of meaning among related words that describe states of mind or degrees of certainty. What in the heck are they talking about? Third grade. What third grade kid? This is crazy. Hey, it's all good. I mean, come on now. Kindergarten, with guidance and support from adults. Respond to questions and suggestions from peers and add details and strengthen writing as needed. This is nuts. So we see she mentions in regards to the effects of Common Core on children that it can be very stressful. It can cause anxiety. It could, cause conflict. So let's think about that word conflict. Yes, that's why. Good point, Derek. Schools will use Common Core or don't get funded, holding schools hostage to make them dumb. Exactly. So that's why I homeschool my children, because I don't have to worry about that BS. Let's go to here though. Okay. Let's go to this sidebar right here. Okay. Dr. Kochnick, whatever her name is, pointed out that brain scans done on grade 12 students doing math facts showed, now math facts is from Common Core, showed that those who memorize them fluently actually have developed a different part of the brain, which then allows another part of the brain to be free to do more complicated computations. All right. In other words, students who have not learned their math facts to the fluency automaticity stage are limited in their abilities to do higher level thinking. Now, this is very important because when you overload a child's brain with all these complications and nuances that you want them to understand and know, you are sending them into stress mode. And we heard her talk about how children who were getting brain scans doing this Common Core math crap had their fear, like the place where they were afraid, okay? They experienced a lot of fear and anxiety, okay? This is a problem, all right? Yes, K-Bear. So, why is it that this Common Core been introduced into these schools without any type of known research or testing? I mean, like she said, we wouldn't allow this in many other fields. The only places we allow no research or testing to be done is in vaccinations in Common Core. Come on, man. I wonder why that is. All right. This is crazy. Common Core is basically stressing kids out. And let's not forget that kids are now in school for much longer. Okay. When I was in school, I was getting out by 2 o'clock, 2:30. All right. During my elementary and middle school days. Now they're getting out at 4 o'clock. They're spending all this time in school. Then they're getting home, and then they have to do extracurricular activity. So by the time they're done with that extracurricular activity, like sports or band or, dance or whatever, they get home. It's like 7, 8 o'clock. They got to eat dinner real quick, and then they got to go to bed. They have no room to do anything fun or creative, outside of that structured extracurricular class. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't just go do what they want to do. They can't ride a bike. They can't go to the park and, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they should be at the park during sports. So really, if your children are in sports, that's the only time they really have to play around and just be but they can't really be independent because they have to do what their coach tells them to do and all this other stuff. So it's no wonder that this Common Core it came about at around the time when more children are being stressed out. I have a nephew. I have a nephew who is just when he got to the 1st or 2nd grade, he was just acting out. You know what I mean? Like, and I believe that it's because of this Common Core curriculum where he had to deal with all this BS. I mean, it's crazy. When you see what they're doing in the schools now, you can understand why some of these kids act out. When I was in school, we had like 3 recesses. You know what I'm saying? We were out early. It was just a different time. So, how do you think that affects the level of stressed out kids and all that? I mean, it correlates. I can't say that it's causing it, you know what I'm saying? But we can say that this Common Core is probably stressing these kids out in a little bit more than any other curriculum that has been introduced before. So that's what I'll say. Derek Williams says 2 + 2 = 5. Of course, that's a stressor in and of itself. I'm told that the child can show how they got the answer. The answer can't be wrong. It's crazy. 3 p.m. school dismissal. Yeah. I heard back in 1990s that Japanese children are in school 9 hours a day. Didn't confirm that, but I heard. Well, if I mean, let's look at the Japanese, man. Like these people are so pent up and withdrawn, and I don't know, man. I don't want to get into that. Yeah, recess was very important. All right, so we touched on Common Core. All right, and now so we have this Common Core stuff now that our children are being inundated with. Okay, so now we're going to look at other factors in the school that may be affecting our children. Okay, so let's talk about the advent of Wi-Fi. Okay, and the proliferation of it. Okay, now this is very important. Explosive use of Wi-Fi creates increase. Wait, I don't know. This is a crazy thing. Explosive use of Wi-Fi creates increases of radiation. I'm pretty sure they meant of EMF radiation exposure. Now, right here is talking about the home, but around this time in 2012 or 2011, they started bringing the Wi-Fi into schools. They started putting those wireless access points in all the schools, classrooms, and you know, I installed some of that Wi-Fi, not knowing the harmful effects of it. So enter a home with Wi-Fi, and you are immediately exposed to an invisible, odorless, and untouchable radio frequency electromagnetic field. Go into a school, office building, or a coffee shop, and you're exposed to even more radiation from multiple Wi-Fi routers and repeater antenna sources. Some say the ambient exposure in these rooms can be as high as 800 millivolts, 6,000 millivolts, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Basically a lot. A millivolt doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, in regards to this is the power output. So the voltage pushes this stuff. All right. To put this in perspective, if you were to go into the country where no radiation sources exist, the ambient reading would be approximately 11 millivolts. 11, as opposed to 6,000 and 3,000. That's right. It is that low because in nature, there is no natural radio frequency radiation. Recently, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine released an article entitled Electromagnetic and Radio Frequency. Jesus, that'll give me something to drink real quick. Radio frequency field effect on human health, which says in the last 5 years, with the advent of wireless devices. Okay, now when was this article done? When was it done? I think this came out, yeah, October 2012. In the last 5 years, with the advent of wireless devices, there has been a massive increase in radio frequency exposure from wireless devices, as well as reports of hypersensitivity. See this? Hypersensitivity and diseases related to electromagnetic field and RF exposure. In short, radiation from modern wireless devices is increasing at an exponential rate, and let's face it, not going away anytime soon. With that said, we need to consider actions to reduce radiation exposure, including the use of EMF shield. All right, we're not going to really get into that, but most people don't know what Wi-Fi is. They just think it's some shit in the air that's helping them get an internet connection, which it is, but it's a lot deeper than that. Wi-Fi is an electronic communication which enables wireless connection between a computer and internet. Many Wi-Fi connections are at RF fields. Okay, this guy needs an editor, but he's right. RF fields, the 2.4 gigahertz. He meant to say connections are in RF fields that are between 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bandwidths, which can travel up to several 100 feet. What? This guy. Not very well written, but you know, it's real shit. Microwave ovens use microwave ovens use identical 2.4 gigahertz frequency to cook food by penetrating the food and oscillating the cells until the food is fully prepared. Do you hear this? Heating up the cells until the food is fully prepared. The Wi-Fi 4 gigahertz may be less intense, but can be considered a thermal and non-thermal exposure, which can heat up cells and generate reasonable high current flow in the body and create potential health dangers. Ironically, the FCC only considers thermal effects of exposure. You see that? The FCC only considers thermal effects of exposure. Why do they only consider thermal effects of exposure? Because they want to put it in all the school classrooms so that they can irradiate your children. Okay? That's why. Derek Williams, Dr. Joseph Mercola, the health ranger, Mike Adams, and Natural News 365 radio host, Jonathan Landsman, all bang the tables about the negative effects. Yeah. But no one's listening. Maybe people need to start connecting dots. All right. So now I'm gonna go over this last thing here. This is the last thing I'm gonna go over on this article. And then you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna look up the frequency at which the dielectric loss of water begins. Okay, and how that will affect us. You know. So, and at what frequency that occurs at. Wi-Fi radiation effect on the human health. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine reports there needs to be more specific studies that better document evidence of thermal bioeffects and non-thermal negative health effects of RF exposure. It continues, however, many in vitro and in vivo and epidemiological studies demonstrate that significant harmful biological effects occur from non-thermal RF exposure and satisfy Hill's criteria of a casualty. Genetic damage, reproductive defects, cancer, neurological degeneration. This is the important part. I mean, it's all important, but for what I'm talking about today, neurological degeneration and nervous system dysfunction, immune system dysfunction, nervous system dysfunction. This is also important. Immune system dysfunction, cognitive effects, protein and peptide damage, kidney damage, and developmental effects have all been reported in the peer-reviewed scientific literature. They also say genotoxic effects from RF exposure including studies of non-thermal levels of exposure consistently and specifically show chromosomal instability, altered gene expression, gene mutations, DNA fragmentation, and DNA structural breaks. Wow. Wi-Fi. Genotoxic is defined as the damaging of DNA causing mutation or cancer. And we all know there's a rise in cancer. These damages have been reported to neurons, red blood cells, to occur. I'm pretty sure he meant. In neurons, red blood cells, and tissue. This report goes on to say that Wi-Fi will degenerate the kidney, can cause neurological damage, has been proven to be a source of electromagnetic field hypersensitivity. It concludes because of the well-documented studies showing adverse effects on health and the not fully understood quantum field effect. AAEM calls for exercising precaution with regard to EMF, RF, and general frequency exposure. It is clear that the human body uses electricity, see, from the chemical bond to the nerve impulse. And obviously, this orderly sequence can be disturbed by an individual specific electromagnetic frequency environment. Wow. See that? So it's well known, okay, through different scientific studies that RF frequencies negatively affect the human body. Some of the cancers are benign, but who would want any? Yeah, I mean, some of the cancers are benign, but, and I know that they say that everyone has cancer in them, but you know, I feel like that's just a reason to justify continuing to keep this crap into us. You know what I'm saying? Keep this crap going. Now, what frequency? Dielectric. All right, I'm not looking at that right. Okay. So now, let's see here. Now, now we're going to talk about, let's see. Now, I have bookmarks here. Let's look at this real quick. Now, children and cell phones. Is phone radiation risky for kids? And this is was written by Hannah Calvin of the What's up, Wax? Yeah, no notification. It was probably the wrong title to put in this, but that's probably what happened. The title. Now, children and cell phones. Is phone radiation risky for kids? Children use cell phones to watch TV, play games, make phone calls, and send text messages. Many older kids and teens have their cell phones, which they are attached to 24/7. But are the risk to such frequent use by children? But are there risks? And if so, is that different than the risk to adults? Cell phones emit a type of radiation known as radio frequency electromagnetic radiation, also referred to as microwave radiation. There have been concerns from the scientific community about whether or not cell phones are safe. Cancer is a particular concern, but since cancers take 10 to 20 years to develop and children frequent cell phone use is relatively recent development, there are more questions than answers. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. 10 to 20 years. See, they throw that lie in there. But we all know, right, that kids as young as 6 or 7 years old, or 8 or 9 or 10 years old, are developing cancer. Now, they might not be using cell phones, but they are at 5 or 6. But they are getting hit by all kind of microwave radiation. You know, in the world, and they're more susceptible to this exposure. All right, way more kids getting cancer now with the advent of cell phones and just RF frequencies, radio frequencies everywhere. All right, everywhere you go, you're getting hit with it. So, to read more about whether we should be worried about cell phone radiation in general, read our article here. There are several studies of the impact of cell phone radiation on children. Here are some of the conclusions so far. A 2010 study of cell phone radiation noted that in general and on average, children suffer higher exposure of their brain regions. Now look at this, brain regions than adults. Very important, brain regions. This is because children have proportionally smaller heads and brains, yet receive the same level of cell phone radiation as adults. The American Academy of Pediatrics agrees, saying that when used by children, the average RF energy deposition is 2 times higher in the brain, 2 times higher than in the brain, and 10 times higher in the bone marrow of the skull, compared with mobile phone used by adults. See that? This is crazy. So we are giving our children cell phones as early as 6 or 7 years old, and you best believe they're gonna be on that cell phone all day if they want to. You know what I'm saying? Just, I mean, it's crazy. All right, so they're getting hit with this radiation nonstop everywhere they go. Another study found that people who began using cell phones and cordless landline phones before the age of 20 are at even higher risk of developing brain tumors. See this? Than people who began using the wireless phone as adults. This is because of the closer proximity of the source of radiation in the brain of kids. They have thinner tissues and bones than adults. This is obvious. This is all obvious. Now let's see. Another study found that blah, 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 blah. Research also suggests that cell phone exposure could affect children's behavior. See this? Now, very important here. Research also suggests, what the hell? Look at that. Let's highlight this. Also suggests that cell phone exposure affects children's behavior. All right? Y'all see that there? Children's behavior. Now, let's go to 4. This is note 4. Wait, where's that at? Okay. No, these are citations. All right. So there's citations here. The children in the study who were hyperactive or had emotional or behavioral problems, including trouble getting along with other kids, were much more likely to have mothers who use cell phones during pregnancy. See that? After accounting for the factors that could affect behavior, the children of these mothers were 80% more likely to have behavioral problems than children whose mothers were rarely or didn't use cell phones. See that? The clear link there. Clear link. I ain't got to spell it out, right? Just wow. Darren Williams says, one of Damaris' cousins is around 4. Her younger mother has given her an iPad. Damaris tells her cousin, of course, the mother ain't trying to hear that. Yeah. She sleeps with the iPad. That's not good. It's not good. However, this is difficult to study because mothers who use cell phones frequently during pregnancy or after the baby is born may pay less attention to their children. See this shit? Wow. However, this is difficult to study because mothers who use cell phones frequently during the pregnancy or after the baby is born may pay a less attention to their children, resulting in the children's bad behavior. So either way, or both. More research is needed, blah, blah, blah. You know how they say that shit. Children that use cell phones more were likely to have ADHD. Although the link to ADHD was only for children who also had high levels of lead in their blood, when researchers adjusted for the blood lead level, they still found ADHD was more likely for children who made more phone calls and spent longer amount of time on the phone. This study was conducted in Korea. In Korea, they love using cell phones. I mean, they cell phoned out. And just to point out, in Korea, the birth rate in Korea has dropped significantly, just so y'all know. In Korea, they are so technologically advanced with these. They have radio frequencies all over the place, much more than we have here, and stronger frequencies. So, you know, that should tell you something. And we're trying to reach that level in the United States. Every cell phone company, terms of use in small print, of course, by law, has to tell the customer, put that damn thing off your. Yeah, because it's radiation, man. And how? Wow, yeah. A 2014 article reviewing studies on children and their cell phone use found that the younger the child, the greater the risk of brain cancer and brain tumors. The same article also points to studies concluding that cell phones are associated with an increase of breast cancer. Oh, excuse me. Ooh-wee. Due to adolescents putting cell phones in their bras. Parotid salivary gland tumors and sperm damage for adolescents. Now look at here. Didn't earlier in this article, I'm pointing out contradictions as well. Didn't they earlier in this article they say that it takes 10 to 20 years to discover? You see this shit? 10 to 20 years to determine. It takes 10 to 20 years to find out what kind of effect this would have. But down here is telling you, reviewing studies on children in their cell phone found that younger children, the greater risk of cancer and brain tumors. The article also points to studies concluding that cell phones are associated with an increased risk of breast cancer due to adolescents. Oh my goodness. Hold on, y'all. Hey, baby. Hold on, y'all. But yeah, look at that. The same article points to studies, they increased risk of breast cancer due to adolescents putting cell phones in their bras. Gland tumors. I mean, come on. They just told you it takes 10 to 20 years. But here they telling you that, come on. It's crazy. Now, y'all can, hold on for a second. Hold on. I'll be back. Whew. All right. So now, again, like I said, I'm back. like I told y'all, they said it takes 10 to 20 years, but here they are letting us know what's going on here. Derek Williams, the ADHD line in the lead levels. Whoa. Yeah. They really getting hit hard. Yeah, in Flint, Michigan. Yep. Went back into the 1970s. Keep their cools and cigarettes in their bras. Now it's a cell phone. Big girl I saw a week ago had 2 phones. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Turkey sausage, organic buttermilk pancakes made with goat milk and turkey bacon. That's what's up. So, what else we got here? I'm going to my bookmarks. I'll bookmark some stuff. Oh yeah, so let's go to this one. Okay, how do I do this? Oh my God. All right, whatever. God dang it. All right, that's some bullshit. Recently bookmarked. So now we got that. Now we know the effects of cell phones on a children's brain. Now let's look at the decline of play and rise in children's mental disorders. Okay, I'm just connecting dots for y'all, man, so we can start making better decisions. The decline of play and rise in children's mental health disorders. The reasons kids are more anxious and depressed than ever. You hear that? Rates of depression and anxiety among young people in America have been increasing steadily for the past 50 to 70 years. Today, by at least some estimates, 5 to 8 times as many high school and college students meet the criteria for a diagnosis of major depression and or anxiety disorder, as was true half a century or more ago. This increased psychopathology is not the result. Psychopathology is not the result of changed diagnostic criteria. It holds even when the measures and criteria are constant. Now, the most recent evidence for the sharp generational rise in young people's depression, anxiety, and other mental disorders comes from a just released study headed by Jean Twang, whatever the hell, I don't know that, at San Diego State University. Twenge and her colleagues took advantage of the fact that Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory questionnaire used to assess a variety of mental disorders have been given to large samples of college students throughout the United States going back as far as 1938. And the MMPIA, the version used with younger adolescents, has been given to samples of high school students going back as far as 1951. The results are consistent with other studies using a variety of indices, whatever the hell that is, which also point to dramatic increases in anxiety and depression in children as well as adolescents and young adults. So it's children, adolescents, and young adults over the last 5 decades or more decades. We would like to think the history is as progress, but in progress is measured in mental health and happiness of young people, then we would have been going backwards. We have been going backwards since the early 50s. All right. The increased psychopathology seems to have nothing to do with realistic dangers and uncertainties in the larger world. The changes do not correlate with economic cycles, wars, or any of the other kind of world events that people talk about as affecting children's mental states. Rates of anxiety and depression among children and adolescents were far lower during the Great Depression. Far lower during the Great Depression, World War II, and the Cold War, and the turbulent 1960s, early 70s than they are today. The changes seem to have much more to do with the way young people view the world than with the way the world actually is. Exactly, Derek. Yeah, children are way more depressed than ever. I told y'all about the 14-year-old kid at the school I was working at committed suicide because his girlfriend left him. Shit's wild, man. The changes seem to have much more to do with, okay, so, and look at this, decline in young people's sense of personal control over their fate. One thing we know about anxiety and depression is that they correlate significantly with people's sense of control or lack of control over their own lives. People who believe that they are in charge of their own fate are less likely to become anxious or depressed than those who believe that they are victims of circumstances beyond their control. You might think that the sense of personal control would have increased over the last several decades. Nah. Real progress has occurred in our ability to prevent and treat diseases. The old prejudices that limited people's options because of race, gender, or sexual orientation have diminished, and the average person is wealthier than in decades past. Yet the data indicates that young people's belief that they have control over their own destinies has declined sharply over the decades. And I'm going to talk about why that might be. Because these kids have so much access to the world through their cell phones and through computers, they are much more easily manipulated via, you know what I'm saying, seeing what they see, you know, all the propaganda that's out there they have access to, you know, and all the access that these entities have to our children through these cell phones and through the internet. I mean, we have less influence over our own children than anything else now. You know what I'm saying? The standard measure of sense of control is a questionnaire, but y'all get what I'm saying. Now let's talk about this. How coercive schooling deprives young people of personal control, directs them towards extrinsic goals, and promotes anxiety and depression. You see? Wow. Yeah, I mean, they just have more access to dangerous things. They're that Momo challenge, that's crazy. Hold on. I need to get my iodine in me. During the same half century or more, that free play has declined. Okay, see what I was telling y'all? Free play has declined. School and school-like activities such as lessons out of school and adult-directed sports have risen continuously. I was just talking about that. I was talking about how you're in school for freaking 8 to 9 hours. Then you're going to participate in organized sports or activities after school. I mean, kids ain't got the time to do nothing else. Children today spend more hours per day, days per year, and years in their life in school than ever before. More weight is given to tests and grades than ever. Outside of school, children spend more time than ever in settings in which they are directed, protected, catered to, ranked, judged, and rewarded by adults. In all of these settings, adults are in control, not children. In school, children learn quickly that their own choices of activities and their own judgments of competence don't count. See that? It's crazy. Like, we don't give any power to our children at all. What matters are the teachers' choices and judgments. Teachers are not entirely predictable. You may study hard and still get a poor grade because you didn't figure out exactly what the teacher wanted you to study or guess correctly what the questions he or she would ask. The goal in class, in the minds of the great majority of students, is not competence but good grades. Given a choice between really learning a subject and getting an A, the great majority of students would, without hesitation, pick the latter. This is very important, man. We have no control over our lives. Our children feel like they have no control over their lives. And this is a big problem. That is true at every stage in the educational process, at least up to the level of graduate school. That's not the fault of the students. That's our fault. You see this? It's our fault. So we've set it up that way. Our system of constant testing and evaluation in school, which becomes increasingly intense with every passing year, is a system that clearly substitutes in extrinsic rewards and goals for intrinsic ones. It is almost designed to produce anxiety, almost designed. You see this? Look at this. Almost designed to produce anxiety and depression. No. Well. Look at that. School is also a place where children have little choice but about with whom they can associate. They are herded into spaces filled with other children they did not choose, and they must spend a good portion of each school day in those spaces. In free play, children who feel harassed or bullied can leave the situation and find another group that is more compatible. See this? In school, they cannot. This is very important. There says, Dr. Leonard Jeffries famously said that test taking is nothing more than testing how well you take a test. Exactly. You ain't learning nothing. And you spend hours and hours cramming and all that just to take a test. Wow. Whether the bullies are other students or teachers. Now look at this. Or teachers. The teachers can be bullies too, which is all too common. The child usually has no choice but to face those persons day after day. The results are sometimes disastrous. A few years ago, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and Jeremy Hunter conducted a study of happiness and unhappiness in public school students in the 6th through 12th grade. Each of 128 participants from 33 different schools in 12 different communities across the country wore a special wristwatch for a week, programmed to provide a signal at random times between 7:30 and 10:30. Whenever the signal went off, participants filled out a questionnaire indicating where they were, what they were doing, and how happy or unhappy they were at the moment. The lowest levels of happiness by far, surprise, surprise, occurred when children were at school, and the highest levels occurred when they were out of school and conversing or playing with friends. Time spent with parents fell in the middle of the range. Average happiness increased on weekends, but then plummeted from late Sunday afternoon through the evening in anticipation of, you see what this going on here? Kids are dreading on Sunday afternoon. Oh, tomorrow I got to go to school. Now they depressed again. See what's going on here? The UK is forcing children to take classes about homosexuality. See, it's crazy. Crazy. As a society, we have come to the conclusion that children must spend increasing amounts of time in the very setting where they least want to be. Why are we doing that to our children? The cost of that belief, as measured by now, some kids are very happy in school. Some of them thrive and excel in school. And that's okay. But the vast majority of them, come on. It doesn't matter. Listen, Listen, some kids are very happy in school, some are not. I was not happy in school. That's why I ditched 60 days. That's why I missed 60 days of school in the second semester of 10th grade and got kicked out because it was just, I hated it. I did things, I did other shit to make me happy. So, you see what I'm saying? So there are all these factors in play that are affecting our children in a negative way. And, you know, it's just, it's crazy. It's like we see it, but we don't care. You know, we just keep it pushing, you know. Yeah. You know, I mean, they shouldn't, they're children. They shouldn't not have to feel stressed about going to school. They should be they should be ready to go to school. I know my kids, when they go to their little classes, you know, they're very happy to go but they're only going to be there for 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? When they go to their math and science class, they're there for 2 hours. Boom, they're done. And when they go to their instrument classes and their dance classes and tap and all that, they're happy there because their cousins attend that class. You know what I'm saying? They know people that love them and all that stuff, and they're happy to go there. They can't wait. You know what I'm saying? But they're only there for 4 hours a day. They're not spending all the freaking time in a classroom. So just connecting the dots. It's very important to connect the dots. No one's going to connect these dots like that. Like these scientists, they're not going to connect these dots. They're going to focus on a specific causal factor. They're not going to say, okay, so we have horrible schooling. We have radio frequencies surrounding our children all day. They don't have as much free time to play. You know, they're being vaccinated with, they're being injected with poison. We got to put all this stuff together. Now, I'm going to get into something a little bit more heavy. All right. We're going to talk about this because it's very important. We're going to talk about this. Doctor's notes. Youth suicide is on the rise, even among the very young. Even among the very young. Look at this kid. He's sitting in the classroom. This kid is sitting in the classroom. All right. Does not look happy. Parents often don't take talk of suicide by young children seriously because they think kids don't understand the concept. In June, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported that suicide in the United States had increased in all age groups since the beginning of the century. What happened at the beginning of the century? Jesus. What happened at the beginning of the century? Cell phone proliferation, man. What happened? Cell phones. And then these the standardized testing. You know what I'm saying? Longer class time, less recess. You know what I'm saying? What are we not seeing here? Why? I tell you what, they don't really care. This is what they hope for. Okay. CNN report asked a handful of my pediatric colleagues if they had heard patients with suicidal thoughts. 3 responded yes, including one with a 12-year-old patient in intensive care for hanging herself. Oh my God. Hanging himself. A 12-year-old. 3 responded yes, including one with a 12-year-old patient in intensive care from hanging himself. Hanging himself. A 12-year-old. He was the second preteen to die from hanging, admitted to Harbor UCLA Medical Center in South Los Angeles. I live in LA. I had another 11-year-old boy who hung himself after a fight with his older brother, said Tom Calais, chief of pediatric intensive care at Harbor UCLA. The big brother found the boy hanging from a belt in his closet. Calais and his team were not able to resuscitate the boy. Worldwide, suicide claims the lives of nearly 1 million people every year. In the U.S., suicide is the third leading cause of death for youth groups, youth age 10 to 24, 10, with nearly 4,600 lives lost each year. Although infrequent, suicide for U.S. children ages 5 to 12 is a growing problem. 5 to 12, a growing 5. I have a 5-year-old son. He don't even know what suicide is yet. Oh my God. Although infrequent, suicide suicide for U.S. children ages 5 to 12 is a growing problem, as 1,309 children in this age group took their own lives from 1999 to 2015. 1,300. That's way too many. Way too many. In California in 2015, 495 youth, 5 to 24, died from suicide. 23 of them were younger than 14. Way too many. Way too many. Nearly 4,300 Californians of all ages died from suicide in 2016, a 50% increase from 2001. 50% increase in suicides from 2001. Suicide rates are higher in California's rural counties, where there are fewer mental health resources. The rates are highest among whites and Native Americans and lowest among Hispanics. We don't know all the reasons for the rise in suicide, but one is possibly social media. All right, social media is a factor. Okay, but she's not going to talk about these radio frequencies our children are exposed to, said Kathleen McKenna, clinical professor of psychiatry at Harbor UCLA. McKenna said on social media, other lives look glamorous, which can lead young people to think their lives are worthless. See this? Another problem is cyberbullying, which can cause suicidal thoughts. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think a 5 to 10-year-old is looking at someone's life and saying, oh, their life is so glamorous, mine is worthless? No. They shouldn't. They have no concept of that. My son, he's 5 years old. He don't care how much money we got or how much money somebody else got. He always what he wants. You know what I'm saying? He's not putting that together. Derek Williams. In 1985, Paul Hardcastle made a song called 19. It talked about how teenage boys thrown into meat grinders or war theaters caused many, commit suicide. Social media is doing that to kids. Exactly. Social media, radio frequency emissions, and Common Core, all those things, the increase in cell phone use. It's all these things are happening. Okay, so research has identified mental illness, depression is common. Now, I gave you guys several ways people get depression, right? I went over how Common Core can cause kids to be depressed. I went over how radio frequencies can affect a child's brain. All right. And now we have social media, access to social media, and cyberbullying. In one study, the CDC also noted that 54% of suicide victims had no known mental illness. Okay. In one study that tried to pin down the risk factors for suicide among children, research reviewed 693 child suicide deaths. 693. They compared information for children ages 5 through 11 with data for early adolescence, 12 to 14 years. In both age groups, Black children were more likely than others. See this? Black children were more likely than others to die from hanging or suffocation. Among the younger children, most were male, died at home, and had relationship problems with family and friends. Now, I just told you guys about risk of conflict, right, with Common Core. Risk of conflict with Common Core. All right. Radio frequency emissions. Less time, less free time, less independency, less control over their own lives. This is how these children feel. They feel like they have less control over their own lives. They're living to please teachers. Okay? They go to school 8 hours a day. That's a big chunk of your day. That's a third of your day. Another third is spent sleeping. All right. And then the last third is spent doing homework and in extracurricular activities. This is a good presentation. If you claim to be good parents, you must study heavy and try to debrief your children. Yeah, yeah. That's why, most kids, my oldest daughter's age, which is 8, have cell phones. She'll be 9. My child does not have a cell phone. She will not have a cell phone. If I need to, I can't. I don't see any reason right now because my kids do not go to school. So anyway, about 1/3 were diagnosed with mental disorders, with depression being more common among the early adolescents and ADHD being more common for young kids. Now, see how they talk about ADHD? I just went over something. I just went over how people can get, how kids are getting ADHD, not just through lead poisoning, okay, but also through radio frequency emissions. ADHD, come on. Of note, depression and anxiety may be misdiagnosed as or coexist with ADHD. Nearly 1/3 of young children in the study had discussed suicide with another person. Parents often don't take talk with suicide by young children seriously because they think kids don't understand the concept, but they do. Wow. By ages 5 to 7, children begin to understand death, though many do not grasp its irreversibility until about age 11. Historically, white children and teens have higher suicide rates than Black youth. This is still true for teens. However, since 2008, suicide rates for elementary school-aged Black children, 2.5 per million, are more than 3 times higher than their white peers. The causes of racial disparities are not well understood. Possible factors include African American youth are more likely to have experienced violence or traumatic stress. Wow. Which have been associated with suicide. Also, Black youth are less likely to receive mental health services for reasons including the stigma around mental illness and lack of access to treatment. You see what they're doing right here? Derek Williams. 4-year-old Florida girl Naka Bennett hung herself with a scarf live on Facebook. That's crazy. Wow. What? Oh man, it's crazy. Well, I hope her mother goes to jail for the rest of her life. That was murder. Now look at this. Look at this important statement here. Okay. Daily exposure to racism also contributes to depression and anxiety for young people. One consideration is the loss of social cohesion within the Black community. Loss of social cohesion within the Black community that may happen with gentrification. Woo! So Black kids not only have to face the music of radio frequencies, Common Core, and bad schooling, but they also have to deal with racism, the loss of social cohesion due to gentrification. Wow. Things are starting to click into place, right? Excuse me. The parents, siblings, and loved ones of suicide victims are left wondering why. The truism, suicide doesn't end the pain, it just transfers to someone else, is especially apt for child suicides. Parents are often overwhelmed with grief, depression, anger, and even consider suicide themselves. Siblings may feel those same emotions. Calais recalls that seeing the pain and guilt on the big brother's face was as hard as caring for the boy who died. There's a lot of pain that comes with adolescents. They need people who care about them, not just the relatives. All right. So, I mean, so now that we have all that shit falling into place, we can understand how our children are being bombarded with all kind of just all kind of stressors, man. You got these radio frequencies, you got the Common Core, you got cyberbullying, which they have more access to now because of the internet, social media. All this stuff is affecting our children in a negative way. Derek Williams, Black as a rule, fear the medical setting. They ain't going to see no psych doctors. Yeah, no. We embrace hardships as a badge of honor. Yeah, I mean, it's you know what it is? It's a lack of trust. What did Margaret Sanger say? Margaret Sanger said that Blacks don't trust white doctors. Okay. Now, we know Margaret Sanger as a eugenicist who started Planned Parenthood. And she said that Black people don't trust white doctors. I'm paraphrasing. So we need to recruit a Black doctor to gain their trust. And they're going to listen to that doctor. And that doctor is going to get them to harm themselves because that's what that's our aim. Our aim is to get rid of all the Black people. So, I mean, it's crazy, man. Look at what we're dealing with. Look what our children are dealing with. Our children are dealing with a lot more stress than we were. When I was a kid, you know, I go to school, and yeah, in school I hated it, and you know, it's not too much different now. I mean, I went to school in the 80s and 90s, so it's not that much different. But like I said, we had a lot more recess. You know, we spent less time in school and all that. Now, toward the end of my schooling, I did notice that things were ratcheting down a little bit more and all that. So it was just beginning when I was getting out. You know, I was supposed to graduate in 1998. I got kicked out in 96. No, get kicked out. Got kicked out in 96. And that's when I started my my group home rotation. You know what I'm saying? I was doing that. I was in different group homes and I ended up getting my GED. I mean, that's how my shit ended. So it's just when you look at all this, you can't help but notice that all these things are a problem. Like these radio frequencies are not good. Not good. And I feel like due to the advent of cell phone technology, the proliferation of it in the 2000s, going along with the increase in suicides among children, you can't deny that. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. All right, because they already had all these other factors, okay? And then you get Common Core, and now the suicide rate is going up even more. So what does that tell y'all? Now, we can't definitively prove causation, but we can damn sure prove correlation. And I can make my own mind up about how all that plays into it. You know what I'm saying? And an intelligent person should do that. So now we have to consider where do we go from here? What should we do? We have to have solutions, right? My solution was to keep my kids out of school. All right. I homeschool my children. They do take classes, okay? But they're not in those classes for a long time. You know, we have better access and control over what our children learn, and our children are very independent. Like my 3-year-old daughter is very independent. You know, she can do a lot of things on her own. You know, except for wipe her butt and get off the potty. I still had to wipe her butt, get off the potty. And that's what you want to do with a 3-year-old. You want to make sure they're doing it right. Now, my son is 5 years old. He can go to the potty. He can wipe himself. You know what I'm saying? He can do all that. He's doing math and reading. He's reading a little bit. You know what I'm saying? He knows. I mean, we do not pressure our children. Okay. They learn organically and they reach their milestones on their own time. I like my first daughter, she was reading full books by the time she was 4 years old, like on her own, you know, following along with the book, reading the book. And my second oldest daughter really didn't start doing that until she was like 6 years old. Now she's reading very fluently. You know, she reads just as well as my 9-year-old daughter. So in school, you don't get that. When you send your children off to school, they're pressured to keep up with the other kids. And if they don't, then they're being held back or they're being told that they're slow and things like that, you know. But nobody could tell me that my 7-year-old daughter was slow when she was 5 years old because she was barely taking an interest in. She wasn't interested. I would try to get her to read, and she'd start crying. She wasn't ready yet. She just didn't want to do it. She was not interested in reading. Now, when she became interested in reading, that's when she started to put more effort into it. Because we were like, okay, we can't force this down her throat. We have to let this happen organically. That's what we did. Boom. She started reading. It like out of nowhere. We're driving down the street and she's reading billboards. We didn't know that she could read that well. Turns out she was actually learning on her own how to read, and with the help of her sister who knew how to read, because it happened organically. That will not happen in school. Okay. Salute to my Derek Williams. Salute to my counselor in 10th grade, Mrs. Moore. She said, find your passion and what you love, and you'll never be depressed. Exactly. Yeah, man. And I've been loving electrical work since I was 18 years old. I went to Job Corps. Okay. I went to Job Corps. And I feel like Job Corps was a better type of schooling for high school age kids, because you can be in Job Corps from age, I think, 14 to 22. It was basically for runaways. I was a runaway. I was considered a runaway. I was an at-risk youth. Okay. I went to Job Corps, and we had a choice. We had choices. Okay. We could do clerical. We could do clerical work, which is like office work. Okay. They prepare you for that type of work from when you're ready to go. They had nursing, and they had HMT, which is was it HMT? Well, basically construction. Okay. I naturally wanted to get into construction. Okay. But within that construction program, they had carpentry, they had plumbing, they had HVAC, and they had electrical. I gravitated toward electrical. That's something that I naturally was attracted to. So I was doing electrical work. You know, I mean, we did pretty much everything, but the electrician that I had teaching me was a woman, and she was good. She was good, great electrician. She was good at teaching it, and she made it fun. And she was a black lady, beautiful black lady. She was bad too, chocolate, with a nice little body, and I that helped. That helped me want to learn it. But once I started getting to the meat of it, I was like, wow, this is fun. Tinkering with wires and making shit work, and all that. But she didn't tell me that I'll have to run all this kind of conduit. There's a lot of that goes into being an electrician, not just putting wires together. But y'all get the drift. I feel like that type of schooling is more appropriate. Now, of course, I'm thinking, why isn't school more like this? I mean, we spent the only thing we did in regards to math and reading, of course, you have to do math when you're doing electrical work. Of course, you have to read when you're doing construction. You have to learn you got to know how to read prints. You got to know how to read specifications. You got to know how to read the code book. So there's reading and math involved in the actual trade that you're doing. If you're a nurse, you're reading all this other shit. If you're clerical, you're reading and you're doing math and you're doing all this. You're doing more, but it's more practical. It's more real world. You know what I'm saying? And we prep for the GED. That's what we did. Once we got our GED, that was it. We was doing strictly whatever whatever field that we were interested in. That's how it worked. And it was a beautiful thing. There. TL Western High School class of 1985. We were inspired to take over the planet, be world citizens, help our fellow man. Good shit. Yes, K Bear, she be handling it. No more shop class. I mean, I was talking to there are shop classes. They're like two in there's two left in LAUSD. Because I was at Carson, working in Carson High School, and the teacher told me in the shop class, a mechanical shop class, like car mechanics, they have an electrical engineering shop class and electrical and mechanical. And the automotive shop guy, he said there were like 4 left in LAUSD, and his budget is like $400 a year. You know, kids ain't gonna be able to do shit. They can't even change a tire, man. So, I mean, this is wild. And then, yeah, they got $400 a year or something like this, something crazy all together, not each. So the mechanic shop guy, he got like $240 a year. Electrical guy got about $240 a year. What can you do with that? And you go into the shop, it's all old, all this old equipment, all these old tools. But what can they do? Yep, Razcast, yep, Razcast. The Mississippi Job Corps frowned on. But if you look at them when they come home, they look behaved upright. Yeah. I mean, I went to Job Corps and they got me a job when I graduated from Job Corps, but it was in Arizona. And one thing I will say about Job Corps is that they don't talk to you about joining unions. So my first job as an electrician was as a non-union pre-apprentice electrician in Arizona. So it's pre-apprentice. It wasn't even apprentice yet. So basically what I did out there was rope houses, you know, new construction, new houses. We pull all the Romex in, you know what I'm saying, land everything, get it all ready. They put the walls up and then we go in there and do the trim. But in Arizona, it's like in the summertime, it can be like 110, 100 something degrees. And I'm only making $6 an hour, $6.50. So I wish they told me about the union, but then I probably wouldn't have joined the Army. So, you know, who knows what would happen? You know, by the time I was 19, I couldn't do it. I couldn't work for $6 an hour. By then it was maybe $7.50. I mean, I did a great job, but I was like, what is this crap, man? I'm working for $6 and it's freaking 100 something degrees out. You know, fuck that. So eventually I joined the Army. But anyway, y'all get my drift. Yeah, Mike Hill Myers, yep. Derek Williams. There's a commercial where the son yelled at his daddy, I know where the lug rich is. Then he asked his mans and he guessed it was one. They in trouble. Now my kids, I mean, they're gonna learn. You know, my kids are gonna be on all that. They're gonna be well-rounded. So I wanted to show. Oh, let me go here. Some Common Core stuff. Oh man. Now, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Common Core math, but I'm going to show a comparison.
I've got 3 10s, which is 30, and 10, and it's 1. I've got 3 10s, which is 30, and 5 1s. So that is 30 plus 5. 12 is 110 plus 2 ones. Okay, so that's step 1. The next step would be to draw a large box. Okay, and on this box, we're going to put both of our expanded numbers. So on the top, I'm going to put 30 plus 5. And on the side, I'm going to put 10 plus 2. Where your plus signs are, I want you to draw lines through the middle and down it. And then in the very corner, we're still multiplying, so I'm going to put a big multiplication sign. Starting with our very first number on the top, we say 10 times this, 10 times that. So first, we're going to do 10 times 30. Sometimes it gets a little tricky when we have those extra zeros on there when we're multiplying by a 10. So I like to say 1 times 3 is 3. And how many zeros do we have?
Yo, this dude making coffee.
We've got 2, so we attach them to the end of the number. So 10 times 30 is 300.
This is ridiculous.
We did 10 times this, 10 times that. 10 times 5 is 50, so it goes in the first box. And then we do 2. We go down to the 2 because we're done with the 10. 2 times this.
This is
2
wild.
times that. So 2 times 30. 2 times 3 is 6. And between both of these numbers, I've only got the 1 0, so I attach it to the end. 2 times 30 is 60. 2 times this. 2 times that. Now I'm going to do 2 times 5. 2 times 5 is 10. I filled up all my numbers on the inside.
They
now,
are strict
all
over
I
trying
have
to work
do
that
is
out, man.
add them up.
That's why they so damn depressed.
So, over here, I'm going to
Look,
add.
you got to go to the other side of the world to finish the equation.
300. And I like to check them off as I go.
Oh, do you now?
50.
Yo,
60.
this dude got to drink his coffee. Look at him.
Make sure you line up your placements. 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. Those are zeros all the way down, so 0.
This is nuts.
0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 6 is 11. 11 plus 1 more is 12. Bring that 2 and carry that 100. 3 plus 1 is 4.
Why are we carrying hundreds?
And that is your answer.
Wow.
35 times 12 equals 420.
You see all that? Why? Let's see what they got going on now. Common Core subtraction.
Hi, my name is Jacob Taylor, and I'm a mathematics teacher at the high school and college level. And I want to talk about a problem that has been making the rounds on social media, and it is a Common Core subtraction problem. And it's the problem that you see right here. And I've been seeing a lot of comments about this problem.
What is all this?
It's hard, and why isn't this the method that we all learned how to subtract? And I want to go over this problem a little bit because I think once it is explained, maybe its value will be understood by more people.
Look at the
Because
link.
this is a really valuable method of subtraction.
No, it's not.
The only method of subtraction by any means. If you're like me, the way
You
that
see this
you
crap?
probably learned how to subtract in school, and
It should not take you 17.18 minutes and 18 seconds.
32 minus 12. You stack the digits
No.
on top of each other like this. 32 minus 12.
Look, 0
You
and 1,
line up the
nigga.
column, and you line up the tens column, and then you just subtract straight down. So 2 minus
Yes.
2 is 0.
Yes.
And 3 minus 1 is 2.
Yes. Boom.
And
That's it. It's 20.
Look how easy that is.
Yeah. That's how it
this
works.
is the method that I learned subtraction, and I'll do one here in a little bit that involves when you can't subtract straight down like this. But this
Oh my
old
God.
method is awesome. What a great way to subtract a problem, especially if a student has explained to them what's happening in the problem. Why do we subtract the ones column? Why do we subtract the tens problem? If it's explained, this is a great method of subtraction. But this new method that is being put forth, or I shouldn't say being put forth, but just made popular by Common Core, because this has been around for a while, but Common Core has made it very popular. This method is outstanding. It's a really good way to subtract.
No,
a lot
it's
of the
not.
comments that I read are from people who say things like, this is way too hard. I don't understand. Why don't they just do it the old way? And I think that's a really valid concern, because if you weren't taught how to
I'm
do
done with this
subtraction
guy.
this way, it probably barely looks like math. It's really hard to just look at this and understand.
You know what?
But most math is that way. Most math problems, if you've never seen it before, you're not going to be able to just look at it and figure out what's going on. When I first saw a problem,
how is it hard to explain this?
Figure out what was even going on in the problem, and
All right, you got 32 minus 12. You got a 3 in the tens column, and you got a 1 in the tens column. You got a 2 in the ones column and a 2 in the ones column. All right,
explain to you
boom.
How this problem is being done.
Because 3 is larger than 1, and it's in the 10 column. You put that on top of the 1. Okay, because it's more.
32 minus 12.
If you want to take something away and you want to make it easy, you take the 1 and the 2 and you put it below, because 1 is less than 3.
But the reason that
in the highest column, the 10th column. Boom. There you go. You got 2, 2. It's the same shit.
Is because the ones digits are the same.
Don't listen to this guy. So when you have a 2 and a 2, that lets you know when you're subtracting, boom. If you have 2 and you take 2 away, you get 0. Okay, now you're left with 3 and 1. Okay, if you have 3 things and you take away 1 of them, you got 2 left. Boom. See how that? How?
It's not as easy as
what?
doing it in your head. 32 minus 12 is an easy problem to do mentally without even needing a piece of paper.
He's crazy.
So
it shouldn't take 18. Look,
because I think maybe
17 minutes. He's going to take 17 minutes to explain this.
If you gave him 32 minus 12,
17 minutes.
This way, if you gave him 32 minus 12,
and I just explained this to you in like 30 seconds. Why?
So let's do
Why?
a more challenging problem.
I'm done with this guy.
Really show the benefit of this method,
Oh my
and
God.
that is.
It shouldn't take you 17 minutes to show me the benefits. All right. All right. You heard me? Oh my God, it's ridiculous. Now let's talk about it. Ooh, I'm interested to see what she got to say. Now it's going to take her 2 minutes to explain why Common Core is dumb. All right. Let's go over this.
Tell you the truth, when I saw the other day what a teacher was doing to get children to add 4 and 4, oh my God, I thought, this is good. I didn't blame him. I turned on Channel 4 for my news, and the first thing I saw, a whole group of women saying no more Common Core. And I thought, tell me, how would you teach them 4 plus 4? And she told me about you add this and subtract this, and they're making it more complicated as far as I'm concerned. 4 and 4, 8. If you're not sure, get an 8 box. There's 4 more. Count them up. They're 8. You're a teacher. If you're having luck doing something one way, don't ask whether it's the better way. If it's doing a good job, use that method. It doesn't go by the name of the method. It goes what does well. Some systems do well with some people, and some systems do not do well with other people. But try to find the one that's reaching the most number of people in the easiest way, and then you have something good going. I think that before you institute a system, be sure that it's had good fortune. And I don't think they waited long enough for this Common Core to produce something outstanding so that we could say, I think we should do that.
Yeah, it's not, because it's not.
All you can say is,
I forgot the last thing.
I'm Madeline Scotto, and I'm 100 years old. That's all you have to say.
I'm Madeline
Oh my God.
Scotto, and
I'm obsessed with looking at this crap. This is crazy.
From the old math to the new math to the new math known as Common Core, let's look at how subtraction has changed over the years. If you learned subtraction in the 1950s, you may have learned the borrow and pay back method. Start on the right in the ones place. Since you can't take 6 from 3, you need to borrow from the tens to make this 13, and pay it back by subtracting an additional 1 here. Now 6 from 13 is 7. Now we need to borrow and pay back again, and 12 minus 1 minus 7 is 4. And 5 minus 1 minus 1 is 3. But some people thought students were just memorizing an algorithm. So in order for students to really understand what they were doing, new math was introduced. New math replaced
That's
borrowing
right,
and
Derek.
paying
You're a
back
smart
with
woman.
regrouping. Let's try it. So you can't take 6 from 3. So you need to regroup your 10s. Instead of 2 10s, you have 1 10 and 10 1s, which you add to your 3 1s. So now 6 1s from 13 1s is 7 1s. And 7 is larger than 1, so you regroup your hundreds into 4 hundreds and 10 10s. 7 10s from 11 10s is 4 10s. And 1 from 4 is 3. But now, once again, we're saying this is just an algorithm, and we want students to understand
it's not
what
an
they're doing.
algorithm.
So here comes the Common Core.
Oh my God.
But this time, it actually does look different. The idea is to subtract the way you would count change in your head. You start with the smaller number and add up to friendlier, larger numbers. Let's start with 176. We add 4 to get to 180. Plus 20 is 200. Plus 300 is 500. Plus 23
What?
gets us to 523. Now add up all the numbers you added along the way.
Oh my
4 and
God.
3 is 7. 2 and 2 is 4. Bring down the 3, and we have 347. When new math came along, it was supposed to help students understand what they were doing. This is exactly what Common Core is trying to do now.
No, it's
New
not.
math was mocked for being more concerned about kids understanding the steps than getting the right answer. And this is exactly what people are complaining about with Common Core. Change is scary, especially when it involves math.
Come on, man. All that retarded shit for that? No, we don't need all that. Okay. Interesting.
Here's a quick video, a little sneak peek into second half. To be quite honest with you, I do see where they're trying to go with this new concept of teaching math. However, I don't think that it is necessarily developmentally appropriate
Not
for
for
a second
kids.
grader. There's
No,
a
it's
lot
not.
of abstract concepts and things that they're just not
And-
quite ready to get if they haven't.
And someone was
grasped
talking about
the
abstract
basic,
concepts
I think,
earlier.
math facts. So Michael came home and he had lots of blank pages on his math work last week, lots of answers that weren't filled in. And I didn't really understand why he wasn't filling in the answers. One of the reasons was he wasn't focused and he was talking, but the root of the problem was that he didn't understand it. So I sat down with him last night and went over a few problems with him. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a couple minutes to actually understand the concept they were wanting to teach so that I would be able to teach him properly. So here's just this quick, simple problem. 8 plus 5 equals blank. Well,
13.
we all know that 8 plus 5 equals 13. And we learned that, 1, we did with manipulatives, and 2, we learned math facts and we memorized our math problems, simple ones, so that we could just throw them out there and not have to think about it. They're breaking it down. They want them, instead of just writing 13 or counting on their fingers, to say, how do we break down the 5 so we can make this a 10? So Michael has to think, okay, well, this is 8.
God.
How many more do I need to make it a 10?
Oh
Oh, well,
my-
I need 2. Well,
Oh my God.
okay, well, that's a 2. So 2 plus what
What?
equals 5? Oh, 2 plus 3 equals 5. Okay, so now I can group 8 and 2. That gives me my grouping of 10.
Oh.
And then I add the 3 and I get 13. Well, I think that's great. That's a great way to do mental math. But this whole process right here is extremely abstract for a 7-year-old to try and figure out. Anyways, that's just my little piece of how I feel about Common Core. I do think it's a great idea.
No, it's not.
I do think
Shut up.
that it could be good for the long run.
No, you have 8 things. Let's say you have 8 cookies. Okay, you put 8 cookies there. If you want to explain to a child why 8 plus 5 equals 13, this is a good way to do it. You get 8 cookies. Okay, you put 8 cookies in front of them. You say, okay, how many cookies we have? They count 8 cookies. All right. They say, oh, we got 8 cookies. If they know how to count, they can do it. Okay, then you put 5 cookies down next to the 8 cookies. You say, okay, now how many cookies are right there? And they count and they find out that there's 5 cookies. Now you say, now count all of them and see how many you have all together. This is what you call addition. you're going to add 8 plus 5. And they're going to count to 13. And then they see it on the paper and they say, oh, okay, that's why 8 plus 5 equals 13. Because if I have 8 of something and I add 5 more, I'll have 13 of it. Boom. Oh my God. No, it's not a good method. And this is precisely why right here. Why are we doing all this? Why are we breaking the 5 down? Why not break the 8 down? I mean, come on. Why are we breaking this down and not this? Is this retarded? It's crazy. So that's where I am with it. See that? So you got that on top of radio frequencies, on top, you know what I'm saying? On top of access to social media. You have all these things working together to drive your children up the wall. And now we have an increase in suicide rates among children. So anyway, I hope that was informative for y'all. Just like I said, just trying to connect the dots, help you guys connect the dots and help you have a better understanding of what our children face in the world today. Hopefully, if you have young children, it'll inform you on how to move forward with their education, because it's very important that we do the right thing. We make the right decisions. I mean, because we place way too many expectations. We put way too much pressure on our children to do everything the way everybody else is doing it. Everybody has to be at the same level at the same time, all this. And on top of that, they have to be cool. They have to be, they have to have tough skin, all that. Like, they have to be super athletes. Like, it's way too much, while they're getting hit with this, these frequencies, and they're listening to the music, and they're being injected with poisonous vaccines. All these things are working together to mess with your children, to mess with my children. I have eliminated half of, I've eliminated half of the weapons for my children. But when they step out in the world, they still got to deal with the weapons out in the world. I mean, you can't completely escape it, but you can safeguard your children. You can give them, you can feed them properly. You can, make sure they're ingesting vitamin C and, they're eating brain food and, make sure they're, not being as exposed to radiation. You want to limit their exposure to radiation. You want to keep them away from this Common Core crap, especially at a very young age. I mean, come on, it's too much. Even like, and the thing is, they got this Common Core stuff they just sprung on everybody, and now the parents have to deal with it. Like, we have to learn this Common Core stuff so that we can teach it to our children. No, I don't think so. No. 2 plus 2 equals 4 because you added 2 and 2 together because you had 2 things and you added 2 more of them. That's why. Okay, that's why you get 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's not because you broke the 2 down to the 1 and you're trying to get the 10 and then take the 8 and 30,000 and then you put it in 30 different boxes and you put the boxes in the air and then you throw them around and you flip them around and you mix them up. Like, no. I'm not doing it. It's not happening. Derek, crazy. Damn good presentation. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. When Snap Turtle talks, Derek, shut up and be listening. Appreciate that, man. I just wanted I just wanted to bring the information out. Y'all have to share it. I mean, because, like I said, the dots have to be connected. We have to be aware of all the things that surrounding our children that our children are being exposed to. My ultimate goal for my family is to own some land and build on that land and live off the land, and thrive and grow our own food, and that's the goal ultimately. Not to be completely shut off from society, but to be isolated enough to where I don't have to deal with society's idiocy. I don't have to breathe. I don't have to be bombarded with radio frequencies. I don't have to have my children, I would love to build a village of people of like minds to all come together and live that way. Live like we're supposed to live. You know what I'm saying? And not on some cult bullshit, but on some real shit like let's people of like mind, we come together and we make things like that happen. We build our own economy. We trade and barter, and y'all get what I'm saying. So next week, I'm going to keep my my hangout presentations on the children for now, because to me that's the most important thing. Without the health and safety of our children intact, all this other shit that we're dealing with won't even matter. So that's going to be my focus for a few weeks. I'm going to next week. It might be I might be talking about vaccinations. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and the effect of that on our children. Today I was talking about suicide rates being increased in for children, and the causal factors, possible causal factors. So hopefully y'all got something out of that, and more people can bring this stuff to the table. That's what it comes down to. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Most folks are sheep, or of the sheep variety. Yeah. And I'm not raising my children to be sheep. I'm not sheep. My wife isn't a sheep. And yeah, let's keep it moving. Hopefully we can all participate in this. We can, all put our heads together and see what the dangers are, Yeah, so like I said, next week, I think I want to touch on vaccines. Yeah. I got to do some digging on that, because, they try to hide a lot about it, and, but, I got to do what I got to do. Anyway, I'm gonna get to my workout, and then I gotta feed my children breakfast. I like to make them a big breakfast on Sunday mornings. So with that being said, much love to y'all. If you didn't catch it, I know they didn't send the notifications out. Hopefully you guys get the notifications. But just come check it out. I mean, you will, So when you see it, share it and get it out there. Share the information, let's do this. Let's get this out. All right. You guys have a great Sunday. I will see you probably tomorrow on a live on the way to work. We'll see. All right. All right. Peace.